It's time for Comeback Sports with Brandon, the Coach Perry, and Pat, the Shot Caller Flaherty. Here we go.
Hey, what's happening, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Comeback Sports, the sports talk show. We go over 10 topics of the most recent sports action that's going on, not just in this country, but across the globe. I am Pat, the Shot Caller Flaherty. I am joined, as always, by my partner, Brandon, the Coach Perry. Brandon, what is happening, my friend?
What's up, Pat? How's it going? I mean, I'm amped up. I'm just coming off the Tampa Bay Bucs boat parade, so I'm ready to go for this show. Let's get into it, baby.
You look like you're a little bit in better shape coming off of that boat than Tom Brady did, but that's good to hear, my friend. That's good to hear. It was a crazy week, and obviously the Super Bowl is going to be one of the biggest things we talk about. And folks, before we get going, make sure you follow us on Twitter. You see both of our Twitter handles at the bottom of your screen right there. And also make sure if you're watching us on our YouTube page for Comeback Sports, give us a subscription to Comeback Sports as well. Click subscribe when you see that up on the screen. So we're going to get right into it. Obviously, the Super Bowl was the massive topic of the week in sports. And, Brandon, we both picked the Chiefs last week. And obviously, we saw the Bucs just absolutely dominated the game against the Chiefs. And it was just an unbelievable win for the Tampa Bay Bucs. And just Tom Brady, once again, win another Super Bowl.
Well, first off, for me and you, I'm going to say you can't win them all. So we're occasionally going to pick them wrong. You know, even with my coaching background, I'm still going to occasionally pick it wrong. That's the beauty of sports and the beauty of professional sports. And I guess if you're a bettor, I'm sure that's the people who are really loving that because, like I said, you're not going to be able to pick them all. And I was shocked. I'm not going to lie. I was shocked. I'll be the first one to say that. I thought Kansas City was going to play a much better game, and they didn't, and we'll get into that later on in the show. But, yeah, Tom Brady actually getting it done, winning his 7th championship, and now has 7 rings, more than any quarterback of all time, is just unbelievable. And the crazy stat I'll throw at you right now is he's got more championships than any franchise does, with the Steelers and the Patriots both having 6, and now Tom Brady has 7 by himself. I'd say that's pretty impressive in any right, and if anybody says it's not, they're just hating at this point. But yeah, I mean, 7 rings. So I was really enjoying him, seeing him having fun in that boat parade and really getting to enjoy himself. And I was like, look at the old man. Look at the old man. He deserves to have some fun. He proved everybody wrong, went out there and got his 7th ring. And I think it was something that he didn't really get to do here in New England, was have as much fun as he wanted to. Obviously, Gronk didn't as well, and that's a whole nother topic we can have on this show. But I think you're getting to see that, and it was really enjoyable getting to see Tom and Gronk having fun and enjoying their championship.
No question. And, I don't think there was no doubt that Brady was the greatest quarterback of all time going into the Super Bowl. He's obviously the all-time winningest quarterback, Super Bowls, regular season games, so forth. He's going to the career records, he's going to continue to break some of those now that Drew Brees is going to retire. Brady's going to play at least another season, if not 2 or 3 more. And so he's going to have probably a lot of the career records as well. One of the things that was interesting to me was, in this game in particular, not that Pat Mahomes was ever going to get to the Brady level, but I thought if Mahomes was able to win and prevent Brady from winning his 7th, that Mahomes could be the next quarterback that could try to challenge Brady for those Super Bowl titles. But now Mahomes still only has 1. Now Brady's got 7. There's no way Mahomes is getting there. There's no way. And I don't think you're ever going to see a quarterback ever again win 7 Super Bowls. I just don't think it's going to happen. It's one of those things that's just, I think it's unreachable at this point. So, he wasn't unbelievable on Sunday, but had a phenomenal game, especially in the first half, and didn't turn the ball over. Played like Tom Brady we're used to seeing him play, with taking care of the football, which is something they lacked the year before. And in the second half, they were able to just run the ball. Fournette was excellent in this game, and but Brady winning his 7th Super Bowl is just unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, I think you called it. He managed the game well, and when your defense is playing lights out, that's pretty much all you have to do. And Tampa Bay's defense was playing lights out. And I mean, another thing was we talked about how Kansas City needed to rush him well and get him off the spot. They did not do that. He got to stand on the spot all night long, so that's credit to Tampa Bay's offensive line. But I think he played really well, and he earned himself that ring by playing well. Didn't have a turnover, didn't have an interception, didn't have a fumble, didn't really make that many bad decisions. I can't even really think of a bad decision that he made in the game or a bad throw. I thought he played extremely well. He used his weapons well, unlike Kansas City. So, I mean, I really think, like I said, he's now earned that 7th title and put himself up there definitely as the greatest quarterback of all time. I agree. Nobody's going to be able to reach that. I don't think you're ever going to see a quarterback, even a skill position player, with 7 titles. So it's up there by itself. I mean, put him in the Hall of Fame right now, even though he's going to be playing for 2 more years. I just think it's just an unbelievable thing. I mean, 7 titles for one player. And I know I was talking to our producer, Ben, about another topic I'd like to have with Tom Brady. And is he the greatest team champion of sports, of team sports of all time? And I'll save my answer for that for the topic maybe next week or the week after. But that's definitely a topic that we're going to have on this show. But moving forward to that Super Bowl game and the Bucs' evolution throughout the year and how it brought them to the Super Bowl, I think they started off kind of slow. And we talked about that earlier in the show and previous shows about how it took them a little bit longer to mesh. And, you know, COVID could have played with that too. There weren't the normal protocols. I know even though the Tampa Bay Bucs were breaking the protocols and practicing at that local high school many a times, I think they needed that. It clearly paid off later in the season. They really kind of gelled and were really peaking at the right time.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons why I didn't think they were going to be able to win the Super Bowl this year, was because you got a brand new quarterback. You do have receivers that are holdovers from the year before, very good receivers in Godwin and Mike Evans, Cameron Brate. But you have a brand new quarterback where you're probably going to have to – it's not like you got a rookie and the rookie's going to fit into your system. Brady's going to bring his own system, and that's one thing that it took some time for both the Bruce Arians / Byron Leftwich system and the Brady system to kind of mesh together. It's kind of a hybrid is what they kind of came up with. It wasn't exactly how the Patriots would run their offense. They took a lot more shots downfield, but they still had some plays where Brady was able to not turn the ball over, dump the ball off to a running back in the flat, have a couple of guys come out of the slot and make plays like a Scotty Miller, or sometimes when Antonio Brown was in there. So, the way that they were able to mesh the two offenses, get Brady comfortable in that offense, and then kind of have their guys all gel together. It does remind me, though, of some previous Patriots seasons. I remember some years where, because we're such spoiled Patriots fans, we'd always say, if they didn't start off 4-0 to start the year, we'd say, what's wrong with these guys? The Pats would almost take the first 3 or 4 games of the season to kind of figure things out. And they would sometimes only go 2-2 or 3-1. And then from then on out, they would go on a run of wins, or they'd win, 8 out of 9 or whatever it was. And then you would kind of see the team playing well towards the end of the year. And then they got into the playoffs and they were rolling. And that's kind of what we saw out of this Bucs team this year as well. Another thing we saw, too, is them get healthy. I mean, Devin White, they were missing for a little while. He came back in the divisional round. And the Bucs defense was good last year. People just didn't realize that, because a lot of times Jameis Winston would turn the ball over and put the defense in such a compromising position that they gave up points because, teams only had to go 30, 40 yards to score. This year, because of the less, I think the Bucs committed the least amount of turnovers this season, or were close to the top of the league when it came to not turning the ball over, as compared to last year when they were one of the top teams that turned the ball over. And that makes a world of difference to your defense. So I think that played a huge part into how the Bucs developed throughout the season and how their defense was unbelievable in the Super Bowl. And we saw that throughout the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think they definitely evolved throughout the season, even offensively, defensively, even with their special teams. They've kind of just evolved. And I think it was one of those things early where, like you said, they had a couple of losses there early in the season that kind of woke them up and kind of made them realize it wasn't just going to be a cakewalk to that Super Bowl if they wanted to get there. And I think that actually energized the team and energized Tom Brady, because people were questioning at that point, is he going to be able to get it done? Was the move correct? I know there was plenty of jokes in New England about him at that point and through the first 6 games. But, I mean, I certainly wasn't one that was making them, because I knew this team was going to gel together. just needed some time, especially with all those offensive weapons, to really get it going. And I mean, I think you definitely got to see that in the penultimate game here in the conference championship and then in the Super Bowl, with the way that some of these positional players played and the way that they meshed with Brady at this point. I think the communication and the just like grouping that they had with the wide receivers and Brady needed that time to come together. And I think even you could see it with that route that Antonio Brown ran in the end zone with that little whip return route. And it was all timing with him and Brady just knew exactly what he was going to do. It was a perfect throw, and they couldn't defend it. And so I think this team evolved, obviously offensively, with Brady and the receivers coming together, and even the running back, Leonard Fournette, proved his worth out of the backfield. But I think the biggest story of them is defensively, how they evolved defensively throughout the year. They really started to put it together. Levante David really deserves a lot of credit. I know that's somebody's that they're not really bringing up much, but he really is the catalyst of that defense in the middle with Devin White. They're both defensive captains, but those two kind of really led the way and really brought the energy. And I know the young cornerback there, Murphy Bunting, he really played well in the playoffs, and he really showed his worth in the secondary. So I really think they evolved defensively a little bit more than they did offensively, and I think obviously it showed. They shut down Kansas City and Pat Mahomes.
Yeah, and another thing that a lot of the Bucs have been talking about too is, once Tom Brady got there, it was like, before every team at the beginning of the year says, we want to win the Super Bowl. Once Brady got there, it was like, okay, we're going to win the Super Bowl, and this is how we have to do it. The mindset of that team changed completely once Brady got there. We've been talking about Bruce Arians and Leftwich and how they did a great job, shaping this offense throughout the season. And I know one thing you wanted to talk about, Brandon, was, if we go to the Kansas City Chiefs, you didn't love the play calling out of Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy. So what were some of the issues you had with the play calling on Super Bowl Sunday with the Kansas City Chiefs, who everybody just assumes is the best offensive team in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people are going to say, obviously, Pat Mahomes was running for his life the whole game, and they probably couldn't call any offensive play that would have went forward. But here's the thing in the game of football, when the defensive line is literally getting anything they want on every down, and that's what they were. They were winning the line of scrimmage on every down. You literally have to go deep into your bag of tricks, and Kansas City has a deep bag of tricks. But we didn't see any of that. Anything that they had run throughout the regular season or anything that they had run even earlier in the playoffs, we didn't see. They just turned into such a vanilla offense. I don't even think Tampa Bay really had to play at a high level, but when they did play at a high level, it shut them down completely. They were just kicking field goals. And to stay with Tom Brady, I think we've all seen that. You can't be kicking field goals. You have to be scoring touchdowns to stay with the Tom Brady-led team. But yeah, the play calling I just think was off, and I don't know if the whole situation with Andy Reid's son, and I know that was the topic that we would want to talk about, but if that was really something that was bothering him and it was in his head and he was thinking about it, which I completely understand. I'm not judging him on that, but I just think the play calling was a little off. And I know earlier in the season and actually in past seasons, when the offense wasn't going, Andy Reid would hand off the play calling to somebody else. Because he know that they needed a jump start. And I think that's something that they probably could have done in the Super Bowl, is maybe let Bieniemy call the second half plays, but they didn't. And Andy Reid called the whole game, and I think he called the dud of a game. Like I said, when you have the defensive lineman getting after your quarterback like that, you've got to throw a screen. You've got to have a halfback screen. You got to have a wide receiver screen, a tight end screen. I mean, they love using Travis Kelce with that middle screen and that halfback or that shovel pass, I should say, to Travis Kelce. Didn't see that. We didn't see a reverse to Tyreek Hill or McCole Hardman. You could have ran a reverse pass off of that. I mean, this is the time that you do maybe a flea flicker or hey, bust out the Philly special. We're pretty aware of the Philly special, right? It's time to come up. It's time to come up with something, because Tampa Bay's got you dialed in. And you have to actually come up and, like I said, go to your bag of tricks. And I just don't think Andy Reid did that at all with any of his play calling. Didn't put his positional players in a position to be able to succeed and to win.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that, you saw Kansas City do in the offseason was draft Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a phenomenal receiving running back. He was hurt for most of the postseason, came back for the Super Bowl. So you would have thought that this was the time that they would have ran more screens, more passes to the flat when Mahomes is seeing that rush from the defensive front seven of the Bucs. And the Bucs linebackers are fast, right? The way to combat that is to get them to over pursue. So those reverses, those misdirection plays are the ways that you can kind of break things open. And like you said, we didn't really see a lot of that. And it could have been Tyreek Hill that you could have run those for. Could have been Hardeman, like you mentioned. We talked about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I mean, you can do a lot with Kelsey, and we just didn't see that out of the Chiefs. So I think you're right. I think the play calling, like you mentioned, I mean, with what happened with Reid, which is just a whole nother ball of wax, and we hope to God that that young girl Ariel makes it. She's in critical condition. It's horrible, and we pray for her, to get back to health. But that had to be on his mind, and there's no way that you can concentrate on a game like that when that happened just 2 days prior to one of your sons who's already had issues in the past. Never mind that he had another son who had some issues and unfortunately is no longer with us. So I think it's one of those things where he had to be distracted. I think the whole team was distracted. But you're right, the play calling originality just wasn't there like it normally is with the Chiefs.
Yeah, like I said, I get the personal situation, and I think people tend to forget that these professional athletes and coaches have personal lives, and it does affect them. And I'm not taking any shots at that, definitely. But I just think the play calling wasn't there. I think he could have handed it off to Bieniemy and maybe got a different play call, maybe just one play. All they needed was one play to kind of spark their team. Yeah. And I mean, to your point, I mean, and to what we've talked about a couple of times is Le'Veon Bell. I mean, you have Le'Veon Bell on your team too, one of the best receiving running backs of all time, and you don't really use him at all during the playoffs. And we definitely didn't see Clyde Helaire get used in that Super Bowl either. Obviously, we saw Pat Mahomes running for his life. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's time. That's when it's time to go to the bag of tricks. That's when it's time to bust out some sort of play call. Even, hey, old school hitch and ladder, and let's try something. Let's just try something to be able to spark our offense and to get our ball into the end zone. But moving on to it's a story. And this is kind of a lead into it is how Kansas City skill players were a no-show. And like I said, I'm going to go back to the coaching and that the coaching didn't really put them in a position to succeed. You saw Tyreek Hill with really no good yards. You saw Hardman with actually nothing. We talked about Clyde Helaire barely getting used. Le'Veon Bell didn't see a snap on the field at all. Travis Kelce was really the only one that had any kind of stat line, and I've been telling people all week it was garbage stats. They really didn't matter. They didn't actually matter in a significant point in the game or even to get a first down. They were all just garbage yards. And I hope Travis Kelce doesn't feel good about himself like he had a great game because honestly, none of the skill players showed up. And like I said, I can go back to the coaching, but I don't know. Maybe it's time that they spoke up into that huddle and said, call my number.
Yeah, exactly. Kelce had a massive drop. And I can't remember if it was third down or fourth down in the first half where Mahomes was running for his life. He thought he was going to get sacked. He somehow got the throw off. The ball hit Kelce in the chest, and he just completely – in the helmet, exactly. And he completely just dropped the ball. And when you have an all-pro – the guy who's considered the best tight end in the NFL, which he probably is, him, George Kittle, however you want to talk about that. Gronk's probably going to have something to say about that too now that he's won a Super Bowl. But – he's got to make that play. That's on your guy being, your quarterback made the play. Your quarterback somehow got that throw off and put it right on you. You got to make the catch. And that didn't happen. Tyreek Hill, once in a while, the kind of player he is, like sometimes you just got to say, Tyreek, here's the ball, go make something happen. You didn't see that. Hardeman's more of a straight line kind of speed player. So I think he's more part of a scheme rather than just giving him the ball, letting him out in space and making plays. But he didn't really go off either. So you're absolutely right. I mean, the Chiefs aren't the Chiefs just because of Pat Mahomes. He's the best quarterback in the NFL, I think, but they're the Chiefs because they have Pat Mahomes and they have all these skills players around him that can make a lot of things happen. You just didn't see that in the Super Bowl at all.
I honestly think Sammy Watkins made 2 plays that were like actually more legit plays and probably went unheard of and unnoticed with his 2 catches that were for first downs. I think that was huge, and like that's another weapon on that team. This team is loaded, and they just didn't do a good job of getting their players the ball. I go back to the coaching staff, and they just had to get their players the ball. Like you said, give Tyreek Hill the ball on a reverse, on a short little screen pass, on a slant, anything to get this guy the ball in open field. Run a misdirection play. Hey, at this point, because Mahomes was already running for his life, put Tyreek Hill in at Wildcat and just give him the ball. Let him go up the middle if he can, or out to the outside, and try to outflank this defense and try to really run with them. Because obviously you said this defense can go sideline to sideline, especially with White and Levante David in the middle. But, I mean, let's go. Let's put our best players out there against their best players. This is a Super Bowl. I just don't think you saw the offensive, or I should say the coaching staff of Kansas City put their positional and their skilled players in position to succeed. Didn't even really give them a chance to get the ball or get it going. And like I said, I'd like to see Hardman on a reverse. And definitely didn't see that, like I said, that shuffle pass to Kelsey, which it seems like they're the only team that runs it, and they didn't even run it in this game. So I was just kind of shocked by that.
Yeah, also the Patriots used to do that direct snap used to be Kevin Falk, then it was Shane Vereen, now it was James White. You didn't see that either out of the Chiefs. So we would like to see some more of those types of plays too. But one of the biggest reasons why they weren't able to do a lot offensively, I know we didn't want to use it as an excuse, but it was definitely there, was our next topic about how banged up their offensive line was. They were missing their 2 tackles, which is tough. No matter how you slice it, you're going against one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. You have Jason Pierre-Paul, you have Shaq Barrett, you have these linebackers that can blitz. They all have pretty good speed. They can get around the edge, and Mahomes was running for his life because his offensive line was, just Swiss cheese on Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the biggest storyline of the game, everything that people are talking about. And I didn't want to bring it up earlier because I knew it was a topic that we would talk about later, but it really was that he was running for his life consistently throughout the game. And like I said, that's when you have to call a screen or something to get the defensive line off of this guy and give him a chance to settle in and play the game. I never really felt like he had a chance to settle in, especially looking downfield. It looked like he was more looking in the opposite direction because he was having to run for his life. I think it is obviously a big story when you have 2 injuries on your offensive line going into the biggest game of the season. Is definitely not a time that you want to have that. They also had the COVID holdout earlier in the season of one of their starters, and that was a big deal, so they didn't have him as well. So this offensive line was banged up, but, I mean, they played pretty good throughout the season. You never really saw what you saw on Super Bowl Sunday. So, I mean, you do have to give the nod to Tampa Bay's defense a lot for the amount of pressure that they put him under, and Todd Bowles for calling an amazing game as the defensive coordinator for Tampa Bay. But I think the injuries played a bigger deal than people want to kind of play into it because, I mean, you had backup players there. Like I said, Jason Pierre-Paul had mentioned that he knew he was playing against a backup. I'm sure Shaq Barrett knew he was playing against a backup as well. Shaq Barrett really turned it up. He was the one that played the best of the 2. He had Mahomes pretty much on ice skates all night. I will say, though, it gave us some of the greatest highlights of incomplete passes we've ever seen, with Pat Mahomes being on the run, throwing these sidearm cannons. That one time when he jumps and is in the air, mid-air, and still just flicks it with his wrist, and the receiver dropped it on him. So, I mean, it gave us some of these rare glimpses of just greatness from Pat Mahomes. But I'm pretty sure Pat Mahomes didn't want to have to be doing that all night and have to be running for his life, especially on a bad foot. He's obviously set to have surgery on his foot. So having to be running with a bad foot against arguably one of the better defensive lines in the NFL, like we talked about. And Dominic Sue kind of put pressure on him a couple of times too. So I don't know. He was just running for his life. The crazy stat I'll leave you with, and I don't know if it's true, but the next gen stats were saying that Patrick Mahomes ran for 500 yards behind the line of scrimmage. So, I mean, that tells you something. If he could have got that going forward, it obviously would have been a record-breaking performance. But he was just on the run for his life all night and couldn't get it going offensively. I kind of feel bad for the guy. He really didn't get to show what he could do.
Yeah, so it was Mahomes' fault what happened on Sunday. I heard also that Mahomes was pressured in that game more than any quarterback has been pressured all season long. Not just Pat Mahomes, not just the Chiefs, any game in the NFL. Meanwhile, Tom Brady was not pressured very often. So I also heard it was, as long as they've been keeping these stats, it's the biggest disparity between one quarterback who's getting completely, having the kitchen sink thrown at him, and the other quarterback being protected and can sit in the pocket all night long. I guess it's the biggest, difference between pressures that there's ever been in an NFL game that happened on Super Bowl Sunday. So that just tells you how much Mahomes was under pressure and how much Brady had time to throw the football. Brady also gets it out quick, so that certainly helps. But that shows you what kind of things the Chiefs were unable to do up front. And I know Kelsey's not necessarily a blocking tight end, and you want to see him out more receiving the football because he's such a good receiver, but I didn't see as much of the Chiefs trying to chip on the outside with a back or with a tight end or with another receiver. You see the Patriots do that all the time. You saw the Bucs do it. Sometimes they have Gronk come in, and Gronk's one of a great blocking tight end, and then sometimes they go out for a pass. So I didn't see that as much with the Chiefs either. And I'm wondering if they could have done a better job assisting those tackles on the outside. I just didn't see it on Super Bowl Sunday either.
No, I mean, that's a great call, Pat. And I bring that back to the coaching staff because that's on them. I mean, at this point, your skill players aren't even getting open. So like you said, why not have our running back chip on the outside, give us a little bit of extra protection? In the coaching world, we call that max protect. And I think they needed to do that a few times. They didn't do that, and he was just running for his life, and they were getting in the backfield routinely. It literally looked like off the snap, and just before he could even get in his drop, he was having to change direction and decide where he was going to try to escape to. So it was just ugly all night. They're definitely going to have to think about that in the offseason, Kansas City, about what they're going to do to reinforce that offensive line and protect their franchise quarterback. I mean, it's a different subject, honestly, but if you saw what happened with Russell Wilson earlier this week, Russell Wilson's saying that he's now frustrated in Seattle because he hasn't been protected enough. I think he's been sacked the most over the last few years in the NFL. So, I mean, you've got franchise quarterbacks that are getting upset about being sacked so much. I'm pretty sure Patrick Mahomes might join that conversation if Kansas City can't go ahead and secure their offensive line. Hopefully with those two guys coming back from injury and then the guy from the COVID holdout, that'll help them secure it up. But we don't know if that's going to go forward into next season where you might have the guy hold out again. And obviously injuries are a big part of the game. So I really think they obviously have to upgrade their backups, and I think they just found that out themselves in the Super Bowl. But moving forward to the big topic, and before we do go on to topic number 6, if you're really liking what you're seeing on this show, you're liking what we're saying, or maybe you're not liking what we're saying, hey, send us an email or send us a tweet or a DM about a topic that you want to hear, and make sure you give us a subscribe and you give us a like to this video. But we're going to move on to topic number 6, and that's the NFL season being done and finished during the era of COVID. And, they got through the whole year, played the Super Bowl, got that done, and now we're heading into the offseason, and they got it all done.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible that they were able to get this finished. Each professional sports league in America has had its own set of challenges when it comes to the pandemic. The first league that got hit the hardest was the NBA. Then they were very smart and figured out the bubble. And then once they had the bubble, they weren't going to have any issues. Nobody got COVID, because of their planning, but also because of the way it was set up. They weren't going to see a lot of COVID issues. They saw none, other than guys, Lou Williams, we'll leave that for another day. But for the most part, the system worked, right? And then you have baseball, who was really the first league that had games outside of a bubble. But because baseball is outdoors, 1, it's a little safer, and 2, guys aren't right on top of each other. Guys aren't engaging each other at the line of scrimmage like they are in football, and you have just less players. You have more than basketball, but you still have less than football. It's about half the size of the roster. So I think football really had maybe the toughest challenge at that point in the pandemic to figure out what to do with their season. And, there were times when things didn't look pretty. I mean, I honestly think COVID kind of screwed up the Patriots a little bit. They were playing really well. Cam Newton got COVID. Stephon Gilmore got COVID as well. And then, all hell kind of broke loose with the Pats, and their season was kind of never the same. You saw what happened with the Denver Broncos, where they didn't have any quarterbacks. They had a receiver play quarterback late in the year. Luckily, the Broncos were completely out of playoff contention, and it didn't really affect, playoff seeding or who made the playoffs or that sort of thing. But other than that, they got through it. Somehow, with all this traveling, the NFL, had these different protocols where, some guys would be on one plane, some guys would be on another, guys would be on one bus, and other guys would be on another. They had contact tracing. If people saw Hard Knocks, they would see all the bracelets and all the different, gadgets that they were trying to use to do this stuff. And they actually did a pretty good job with it, considering the amount of players and the amount of time that players on the field are engaged in front of each other, where you could see, physical contact. So I thought the NFL did a really great job. It was something that none of these sports leagues have had to deal with before.
Yeah, like you said, nobody's had to deal with this before. Everything was kind of being learned on the fly. And I do think they did a great job of getting through the whole season. And I think they kind of decided that, hey, we're just not going to take a break, and we're not going to cancel any games. And obviously it's money talks, and it's all about that money and those TV contracts. And so they knew that, hey, we're not going to cancel any games. We're going to get the TV contracts. But that's when you had situations where, like in Denver, where they had no quarterbacks that could play, but the game was still going to go on. And by the way, I think that wide receiver did a great job coming in and playing backup quarterback, and especially in the NFL. But, I mean, I think you did see a lot of situations like that where you had positional groups that were out because of contact tracing, but the game just still went on. I think the Ravens had no running backs one game. So it was just, they set the tone that we're not going to cancel any games. We're going to play through this. We're going to get through this. We need the money. I know the owners were complaining about it, and because they're not going to get any fans, so they're not going to get the ticket revenue. So they needed the contract of the TV revenue to bring in any kind of money to help their franchises. So I really wasn't shocked. I am shocked, though, that they didn't cancel or postpone a game. I think that is really one of the bigger stories. They just got through the whole season and just kept going, got through the Super Bowl here. And like you said, they made sure that they were using certain protocols to make sure that they could get through the season. And even Kansas City was doing that going up into the Super Bowl week, where they took 2 different planes down, one for just players and then staff and other personnel on a different plane. And I think, they talked about this at the beginning of the pandemic, where could the NFL do a bubble? And obviously the NFL came out, and a lot of the NFL players came out and just said that's just impossible because
too many guys.
Yeah, just too many people. You have over 100 people, and I'm talking not just players. We're talking about coaches. We're talking about trainers. We're talking about personnel. We're talking about equipment managers. There's a lot of people that go into this. You got travel liaisons that travel with these guys. You've got security that travels. So it's a lot of people that you would have had to have put into a bubble per se. And I think even if they tried doing it at the Worldwide of Sports at Disney, I don't think that would have been successful. I don't think the players would have liked being there. They would have had to be there for months, unlike the NBA bubble where it was only about a month or 6 weeks tops. But yeah, I mean, cheers to the NFL. I think we all needed to be watching some NFL games during these times. So I'm glad they did get through the season, and I'm looking forward to next season.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we got to remember, too, on the business side of it, obviously public health is number one, but on the business side of it, you're looking at the NBA right now and the NHL. They're now, the NFL was sort of criticized for, like, we're just going to power through this, right? We're going to put games on Tuesday nights, or I think they had a game on a Wednesday night at one point, had to move bye weeks around, and the Steelers were kind of like saying we never really had a bye week, and which is kind of true, but the NFL powered through it. They got kind of criticized, but now you're seeing the NBA and the NHL kind of power through it as well. Now, the NFL has the luxury of having one game a week because that's how the sport is built. So you have some days in between to kind of reshuffle the schedule a little bit, where it's more of a hassle for the NBA or the NHL. But the reason that the NBA and the NHL are doing it now is because this season is going to be kind of wacky, but they want to make sure that the following season, the 21-22 season, is on schedule, because that's when they want to be able to open up the arenas again and start making money again. And you're seeing those teams now adapt the way that the NFL did it to get through this season. I think now we're seeing these sports leagues are just trying to get through these seasons. They know that at some point there's going to be players that are exposed. It's just naturally going to happen. Luckily a lot of these players are in tremendous physical condition. Hopefully they're staying away from family as much as possible, extended family, and staying away from senior citizens and so forth. Certainly what happened to Karl Anthony Towns' his family is terrible. And I know there's some other athletes that have had some family lose life in their families as well, which is awful. But these leagues have to power through it if they want the following season to go on as scheduled. So I think a lot of teams are adapting. A lot of leagues are adapting what the NFL did. One other thing, other than the Super Bowl that happened over the weekend for the NFL, is they did announce the 2021 Hall of Fame class for the National Football League. And one of the cool things about this induction, Brandon, and announcing who's going to be in this one is we're now kind of seeing the guys that we really watched a lot in middle school, high school, and then maybe a little bit in college as well, because top of the list is Peyton Manning, it's Calvin Johnson, John Lynch. Loved Charles Woodson when he was playing, even though he sacked Brady in the snowball game. But a lot of great players that I watched a lot of in high school and college. It's cool to see them going to the Hall of Fame now.
Yeah, no, I agree. These are like the limelights of the NFL years for us. I love this class. It's, to me, arguably one of the best classes of all time going in there. Like you said, just with those top three. I mean, for me, Peyton Manning, Megatron, and then Charles Woodson. And like I said, I mean, obviously Megatron is Calvin Johnson. I mean, when you have a nickname like that, that should just get you automatic Hall of Fame rights, because obviously you are one bad guy to get a name like Megatron, and he really deserved that. The guy was unstoppable. I was watching some of his highlights over this past week. So it's an amazing class. I'm really looking to see how they're going to do the enshrinement, because obviously we're underneath the COVID protocols, so I don't think they're going to have the normal amount of fans and family that they do there. And it wouldn't shock me to have some of these players come in and kind of do like we're doing and kind of zoom themselves in to the enshrinement with their speech. But I'm really looking forward to their speeches, especially Peyton Manning, because, I mean, he is a showman. I honestly have liked him more, him and Eli, to be honest. I've liked Peyton and Eli more now in their retirement than I did when they were playing, because they're honestly they're funny. They're great guys. I love seeing them on their social media. Peyton Manning with his show there on ESPN is amazing. I still haven't got to watch all the episodes, but I mean, he's just a great guy. He deserves it with obviously all his talent. He is arguably up there as the greatest quarterback of all time. I mean, Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time, but you have to put Peyton Manning in the top three, in my opinion. And honestly, he might be just number two by himself. And he deserves to be up there. A great player. I'm glad to see him getting enshrined. Glad to see Megatron Calvin Johnson getting enshrined. A guy that I wish I got to see more of his career. You wish you got to see him play a little bit more. He just decided he wanted to hang it up because Detroit really wouldn't give him the way out like they did Matt Stafford. But yeah, a great player that deserves to get in. And then Charles Woodson, one of the greatest college players of all time. And then follows it up with being one of the greatest NFL players of all time. Great player. Love seeing him get enshrined. John Lynch, one of my favorite players of the Tampa Bay Bucs team of old. That guy just loved to hit. And if you're going to have a safety coming down into the box, this guy just loved hitting. And that's really what I loved watching the most about John Lynch's game. So, yeah, this is a great Hall of Fame class. Really looking forward to the enshrinement.
No question. We can talk about the top three or four, all day long, too, because of how much we saw them play. But I think we also need to mention some of the other people that are getting into the Hall of Fame as well. Alan Faneca was a great offensive lineman for the Packers for several years. Drew Pearson, who was a great receiver for the Cowboys in the 70s when Roger Staubach was throwing the football. He was a three-time first-team All-Pro, so certainly a very deserving receiver. Tom Flores, who is other than Mike Ditka, the only player and coach to win the Super Bowl. He did one as a player, he won one as a player, and won one as a coach. And now he's getting into the Hall of Fame. And he's one of the, there's been a lot of talk about how there's not enough Latin Americans in the NFL Hall of Fame. And he's one of those people who is honored as a Latin American in the Hall of Fame. And also Bill Nunn, who was a longtime executive for the Steelers. He helped put those great 70s Steelers teams together with Lynn Swann and with Terry Bradshaw and all those other great players that they had when Chuck Noll was coaching them in the 70s. So it is really a great class coming up for the NFL. And it's gonna be a fun one, especially like you mentioned though, with Peyton Manning headlining the class. He's gonna be on the front of everything. He'll probably be the last guy that's gonna speak, and it's gonna be really fun.
I mean, I selfishly want to see Peyton Manning throw a pass to Calvin Johnson if they can make that happen.
I think Calvin did that too during his career, probably.
I think that would be awesome. So I would, like I said, selfishly love to see that happen if the NFL could make that happen during the enshrinement. But yeah, it's just such a great class. I'm glad you highlighted some of those other guys. Alan Faneca, man, what a great lineman, a solid lineman, played a lot of years, and was really one of those offensive linemen that you could count on to get it done in the trenches week after week. So yeah, a great player in his own right. I'm glad to see him get in there. And then Drew Pearson, like you said, I mean, through the heartaches of the years that we saw him waiting to have his name called, and those years where he didn't have his name called, and like I said, just absolute heartbreak for him. So to see him finally get in and actually get the call, and he's well deserving of it. I think he probably should have been inducted earlier, but it's great to see him getting in now. But yeah, I mean, the leaders of this class that everybody's going to go to, that's got everybody excited, Peyton Manning, Calvin Johnson, Charles Woodson, John Lynch. I think those are the real headliners of this Hall of Fame class. And like I said, really, really looking forward to the Hall of Fame enshrinement, and looking forward to seeing how the NFL is going to pull that off as well. Moving forward to an exciting topic, I'm glad that it got done finally. This week is Lewis Hamilton signing his contract with Mercedes. He signed a one-year deal to stay with Mercedes, $49 million for 1 year. What do you think about that, just in the numbers, Pat?
Unbelievable. I mean, he's worth it. I remember, I think it was in the mid-'90s when Michael Jordan signed for a contract where he was making $30 million or something like that for a season. And a lot of people are up in arms about it, like, oh, there's an athlete making $30 million a year. And then I think it was even Dennis Rodman was like, he's worth it. Like, you kidding me? You know how much money he makes for the Bulls? You know how, obviously, he's the greatest basketball player ever. I mean, up there with LeBron, obviously. And he's totally worth $30 million a year. Now you look at Lewis Hamilton, the popularity that he brings to F1 and just the draw that he brings to the sport, he's absolutely worth that money. And he's going to be drawing people in. He's going for his 8th F1 racing title that he could pass Michael Schumacher, which means that he's going to bring even more attention because of that. He's totally worth the money. I think a lot of people were surprised that it took this long to get this done, but there were a bunch of different circumstances and reasons for it not getting done sooner. Lewis Hamilton got COVID. And then they didn't want to do it when Hamilton was still racing towards the end of the year. So that's why it kind of took this long. And also F1 racing, and this is kind of why I think it's just a one-year contract, is that, I think you're going to see this in a lot of other sports as well, is that they just don't know what's going to happen because of the pandemic. They don't know what the next couple of years after this upcoming year are going to look like, either financially or just logistically because of travel and things like that as well. So they did just the 1 year with Lewis Hamilton, but I think most people kind of knew it was going to get done, but I'm sure a lot of Lewis Hamilton fans are just glad that it's now signed, sealed, and delivered.
Yeah, I'm one of them. You're looking at him right here. Bango, Lewis Hamilton, super fan. I should be wearing my Mercedes shirt right now. And that just goes to the fact, honestly, that, like you said, he sells stuff. He sells his brand. He sells Mercedes. So the guy's well worth the money. $49 million is kind of well in line with the last contract that he signed. He had signed a 2-year deal that was worth $100 million with Mercedes prior to this. So it's really not shocking to me to see those kind of figures, even on a one-year deal. But here's a little bit more to the inside of F1 as well, and to why I'm thinking that Lewis only wanted to sign a one-year deal was because the regulations are going to change in F1 in 2022. So I think he wants to make sure that Mercedes is still going to be at the head of the game. They're still going to be able to deliver a car with the new regulations that's going to give them a chance to go ahead and win titles. And if they can't do that, well, then he'll be back on the market and go to one of the teams that can deliver a car. But however, I guarantee you Mercedes will deliver a car for him to be able to drive when the regulations change in 2022. And I think when you see that new car and with all the teams having to change and adjust to the new regulations, I think you'll see drivers looking to sign 2 to 3 year deals at that point, because the regulations will be set in and we'll know, are Red Bull going to be up front again? Is Mercedes going to be up front? Is Ferrari going to make their way back to the front with the new regulations that's supposed to bring in tighter racing in 2022? So I think that was another main reason why he signed that 1 year deal. But I think you're right with the pandemic and kind of the up and down. There were no fans at most of the F1 races, so they lost the revenue there. So I think you're right where they can't really lock themselves into major deals yet. And kind of like a guy that we're going to be talking about in the next topic, he signed a 1 year deal as well. So I think a lot of drivers are kind of finding themselves in this 1 year deal market to kind of see where F1 is going to be next year, where the teams are going to be next year, because you had a couple of teams that almost went under in the break. Haas F1 was rumored to be struggling, and Williams were rumored to be struggling. Williams was saved by a United States conglomerate that came in and bought it out and brought some major money to them. And Haas, I mean, I don't even want to talk about the Russian money that they're getting with their Russian driver that has kind of saved their program. But going back to the champion, 7-time champion, going for 8 championships to break Michael Schumacher's record. He is definitely worth the $49 million per year. I'm really looking forward to seeing him jump in the car and getting to test the car over the next couple of weeks in the winter testing. And I'm glad that the deal is finally done.
Yeah. Again, I think it's one of those things where we all kind of knew it was going to happen. It kept kind of getting kicked down the road. Now you're like, oh, is this going to happen? Well, hopefully this happens, but you knew he wasn't going to be leaving that car and those guys for at least the upcoming year. So good to see that Hamilton's going to be around for another season with those guys. As you mentioned before, we have another driver that just signed a nice deal too, and that was Sergio Perez, who just signed a deal with Red Bull. And we were talking before the show how Perez has sort of been, in the mix, but has never really been elite because of the car he's driving. It's going to change now, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this is the greatest part about Sergio Perez making his way to Red Bull is now he's got himself a chance with a car that gives him a chance to win and gives him a chance to be at the front of the grid, to battle with Lewis Hamilton, to battle with Valtteri Bottas, and to battle with his teammate, number 1, Max Verstappen. And I know that's really why Red Bull really wanted to bring him in. Christian Horner was looking for somebody to come in to be able to push Max Verstappen. Alex Albon really dropped the ball, couldn't get it done, really could not drive the car the way they wanted to be able to push Max Verstappen and to be able to give Red Bull 2 cars up at the front to be able to challenge Mercedes and to give them different strategy options with Max Verstappen. And you just didn't see that. So they're really thinking that Sergio Perez coming in is going to be able to do that. He's a veteran. He's been around F1 for a while. He's raced for a few other teams. He brings in a strong following with his Mexican fans and a lot of actually North American fans. I'm a big fan of Sergio Perez as well. He's going to bring in the money as well to the team, and he's going to deliver. I'm really looking forward to seeing him in the car. They had his factory visit over the past week where you really got to see him walking around and getting introduced to the people in the factory that are building the cars and just the people on his new team. Red Bull's his new team. So I'm really looking forward to seeing him battle Max Verstappen, but I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do in a car that's suited to win and has a chance to win almost every other weekend, if not every weekend.
Yeah. I mean, like you mentioned, he's been around since 2011, I believe, in F1 racing, and he's had 10 podium finishes in that time. But I believe he got his first career win this past season. So clearly he has the talent to be in the mix. He can kind of hang with anybody, but like you mentioned before, with having a much better car and being in a better position to really do some damage on the F1 racing circuit now that he signed with Red Bull. And I would imagine his popularity is going to grow a little bit too with a better car, a better brand, a better team. And, that's certainly going to only help his marketability. It's going to help, more fans get attracted. You mentioned the Mexican fan base that he brings because of his heritage. He's going to bring more of that population to F1 racing as well to help the popularity there. So I think it's just a win-win for everybody that he's now with Red Bull, and I think that certainly helps.
Yeah, and like I said, I think for him this is awesome, and I think you got to see it on his face walking around the factory that he finally has the confidence to know that he's in a car that can win every weekend, and he's going to get a chance to really show off what type of driver he is and show the talent that he has in the world of motorsports. So I think that's really why I'm really looking forward to it the most, is seeing what this guy can do with a car that's built to go to the front and is built to challenge the likes of Lewis Hamilton. So you're going to get to see these two kind of going wheel to wheel every week with Max Verstappen, with Valtteri Bottas. And honestly, that's what we want as race fans. We're looking for wheel-to-wheel racing and excitement, and I think we're going to get that. The 2020 season was probably one of the most exciting F1 seasons that we've had in recent times, but I think 2021 might be setting up to be even a better season than we just saw. So I'm really excited. I'm really looking forward to, like I said, winter testing, and that will kind of be when everything gets started over here in the next few weeks. But moving on to our last topic of the night. And hey, I know you're loving what you're seeing here. Give us a subscribe, give us a like, come back every Wednesday because we're going to have more hot topics for you and great topics to go over in the world of sports. So make sure you're giving us a like and make sure you're giving the show a subscribe. But moving on to the NBA All-Star Game, they're trying to force an All-Star Game, in my opinion. I think that's the wording. They're trying to force an All-Star Game. What do you think about that, Pat? Do you think it's a smart move from the NBA?
I don't understand this. I don't understand this. You have this league that did a phenomenal job with the bubble. They did a great job reacting to what happened with the pandemic. Adam Silver is a very smart commissioner, but this is dumb. I don't understand. I know they're trying to make money, but you're doing a couple of things. You're playing a game that doesn't matter. The NBA All-Star Game's fun. There's no defense. It's out of all the All-Star games, the Pro Bowl's the worst. And then I think the NBA All-Star Game is the second worst, the actual game. The funnest part, I think, is Saturday night when they have the dunk contest, the three-point contest, the skills challenge. That's the stuff that I like watching a lot more than the actual game. And they're not going to have that. They're talking about having the dunk contest at halftime of the All-Star Game, which makes sense because they're just going to have one day of, they're not there the whole weekend. They're just going to do one day of it. But why do it at all is the part that I don't understand. And you got to remember, too, the actual logistics of it. What you're doing is you're taking the best players in the NBA. You're bringing them all together inside in one arena. You're inviting a COVID super spreader at the All-Star Game. You just are. All these guys who have been playing and trying to stay away from COVID this whole time, they all get together. They're all buddies. They're all friends. Some of them are just young guys. They're going to go out. They're going to mess up. And then they're all going to be together, and it's going to spread amongst all the best players. I think this is dumb. I don't understand. For a smart guy, Adam Silver, I don't know what you're doing. I think this is a bad idea.
I think, sadly, once again, this is another move that is money-driven and money-directed, that they're trying to force an All-Star Game so they can have commercials and sponsors on the court and stuff like that. So this is the NBA trying to scratch some money. I mean, you're getting plenty of money. You charge $100 for your jerseys. Give me a break. So you're getting plenty of money at this time. So I think this is a money grab. And I think even trying to force the dunk contest during halftime proves how much you're trying to force the whole weekend and try to force the game. And you brought up a great point with it being a super spreader. And not a super spreader for a country, but a super spreader for the NBA. You're having all the great NBA players come in. Like you said, they could contract it, and now they're going to bring it back to their individual teams, and then that could go to their teammates, creating more of a problem than you're already dealing with at this point. So I'm with you. I think this is a stupid idea. I'm really shocked that they're trying to go forward with it. But then again, it's all about the money, and that's really why they're trying to force this down our throats. But here's the best part is some of the NBA players have already spoken out against it. LeBron James, #1, saying, my heart is not in an all-star game right now, and I would not want to play in an all-star game. And then you had Giannis say that he would not want to play in an all-star game. So what are you going to do when your two biggest stars, arguably, even though I don't like Giannis, arguably show up and say they don't want to play in the all-star game, right? I mean, who wants to watch that game? I'm going to be honest, I haven't watched the game probably since, I don't even know, 2007, maybe even before then. I do watch the skills competition and the dunk contest because, like you said, those are a lot more exciting, a lot more driven from, like, you know, social media and people getting involved and the fans getting involved. But the game itself is just no defense. It's a dunk show. Everybody's just shooting until the last, like, quarter, basically, when they all decide that they want to play for the bonus money, because that's what it is. One team gets a bonus check for winning. So when they all decide that they want to kind of be money hungry at that point and then play some defense. So I guess when I have watched it in the years past, it's only been the fourth quarter. But yeah, I mean, you don't need an all-star game right now during this COVID situation. Give these players a rest. They're just coming off a short break too. You only had 71 days in between the seasons from the bubble. So I think you should just give them a week rest or however many days rest, and then just get back into the season and kind of let these guys get back into the swing of things with their normal teams. And you know, like you said, most of these NBA franchises are trying to keep their teams and their players in their team bubble, at least in their city bubble, and trying to protect them that way. So let's just keep doing that, and I think that'll be a smarter idea.
Right. I mean, if you want to try to at least make a little bit of money, have an NBA All-Star, you know, TV special where you come out, you announce the All-Stars, you announce, you know, the All-Star teams, you announce, you know, different awards or whatever you want to do, and just have something like that where you bring players in, they're on Skype, they're on Zoom, and you interview them, and you maybe do something different. Maybe you have that, you know, they were doing horse, you know, back when the pandemic was really, really bad when it first came out. Do something like that where you're still engaging the players, you're engaging the fans. It's not going to be the same as having an all-star game. You can't have that many fans in the arena anyway. So why are you trying to force an in-person all-star game like this? I just think it's a terrible idea. And the thing about the skills competition, the dunk contest, the three-point contest, a lot of times it's the non-all-stars that are in those contests. And those types of guys get a little more attention if they win the three-point contest or they perform well in the dunk contest. When they start, you know, you go to the all-star game, everybody knows the guys in the game. And if an all-star who's maybe a little bit lesser known, you know, has a good all-star game, that doesn't make them a better player or give them more attention. They're already an all-star. We all know who these guys are, especially now in the NBA. There's so many different ways to follow the NBA. You don't need to do this. I just think it's a bad idea. But that's it for our 10 topics tonight, folks. And again, like Brandon's been saying, make sure you subscribe to Comeback Sports on YouTube. You can also follow us on Twitter. We always post the link on our Twitter handles as well. But I know our producer, Ben Kudo, who's been doing a phenomenal job with this show, is going to come in with our email question of the week. So, Ben, fire away, my friend.
Hey guys, great show.
What's up, Ben?
Hey, how's it going? Great show. So what we have is from Hector. We had a YouTube comment. It says, "Why would he, meaning Watson, have to say anything? He is a QB, not in the front office." I get it. Cal is a bad owner, but to have players have a say so, who is getting hired, the whole NFL would be a crazy mess, let's say. So this is from Hector. So this is a comment on our basically on the irate Houston emailer before, who said Watson's got no business and he's having a hissy fit. What do you guys say?
Brandon, I'm going to let you take this one first.
Well, my question is, was that email from Brett Favre? Because that honestly sounded like exactly what Brett Favre said this week about how Watson needs to be quiet. And I just highly disagree with that, you know, and I highly disagree. I mean, Brett Favre, you're being a hypocrite yourself, because you used to hold out and make your team wait until the very last second before you would even decide if you wanted to come back and play. And then you actually went from Green Bay and then played for the arch nemesis Minnesota Vikings. So Brett Favre kind of just needs to be quiet. I like him as a player, but I think he's just a hypocrite in this situation. And I think Hector kind of is too, for kind of saying this, because obviously he is the franchise. He is the franchise quarterback. He has a chance and a decision of where he's going to go to play. The Texans signed on to it because they signed into his contract him having the no trade clause. So they've given him the right to be able to decide where he wants to go and where he's going to play, whether it's in Houston or whether he wants to go to a different franchise. At this point, he said he wants to go to a different franchise. I'm just looking forward to where that new franchise is so I can buy his jersey.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that what Hector and some other fans who are against Watson in this situation are realizing is that, once Houston traded away DeAndre Hopkins, Watson was upset. That's his number one receiver. And Cal McNair said, I understand why you're upset about this. We're going to include you in who the next, once they got rid of Bill O'Brien, who the next coach is, who the next GM is. He promised Watson that he would do that. So it's not necessarily that Watson wants to be in there, with the third, their third round pick in the NFL draft, the Houston Texans take this left tackle from, Southern Miss. He doesn't need to be there for that. But what he wants to do is just have a say in these types of personnel decisions. They invested a lot of money in him. The owner promised him that. And then the owner didn't deliver when he went and hired Nick Caserio without even talking to Watson. So that's the problem that Watson has. It's not that Watson wants to make picks or be the one that says we need to go out and get this free agent. He just wants to have a little bit of say in which he was promised by the owner. And from Watson's comments over the last couple of months saying, it's not, the only way that this situation can be rectified is if that Cal McNair fires Cal McNair. That tells you all you need to know. He's upset at Cal McNair. Even though Jack Easterby, who I think is doing a terrible job and has thrown a whole, monkey wrench in the whole situation in Houston, he's not a GM. I don't know what that guy is doing there. It's crazy that he has all that much power. But Watson just wanted Cal McNair to fulfill his promise, and he didn't do that. And that's what Watson's upset about.
I one quick thing. I would just say Houston made their bed. It's time to lie in it, Houston. Get in there. Get in there and cover yourselves up, Houston fans.
Trade's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. It's going to be before the draft, and Caserio's not going to give anything away. That's why he said he's going to keep Watson, but he'll trade him. He's holding out for the best trade package. That's all it is.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a tough situation because if it doesn't work out, it's going to be such a strange year in Houston. But
it's going to happen.
Let's see what we have. One more note here. This one was a Twitter DM. It says, "What is up with the Celtics? Is this just a bump in the road, or are we already derailed? Time for a new coach in Boston? ? Rick from Foxborough." So this was I was basically talking Celtics on Twitter. And ended up getting this in my DM here. So this is, I think, in a response to the Jaylen Brown calling out the team. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, Ben, you mentioned to us before the game that Brown was upset at his team last night, and they need to play better. And they should be ashamed of how they played, and they need to step up their play. He's absolutely right. The Celtics need to play better. I think I don't want to build excuses into this season so far, but do you think that the Miami Heat need a new head coach? I mean, Eric Spoelstra is one of the best coaches in the NBA, and the Heat are struggling at the start of the season. They're well below 500. They're not in a position where they're going to make the playoffs. I think they might be in position to get into that play-in tournament, but they're struggling. They're like 5 games under 500. So the Celtics, who have had COVID issues, just like the Heat, you haven't had Tatum for a couple of weeks. Kemba Walker didn't play for the first month of the season. He's still trying to figure things out. The one good thing I'll say about Kemba, he actually looks healthy. He's just not hitting his shots. So it's more of a basketball thing than it is a health thing, which is actually a positive. You were missing Robert Williams and Tristan Thompson for a few games early in the year because of COVID. And now they're also at the point where they kind of have too many guys. Now that Peyton Pritchard's back, they're going to get Marcus Smart back pretty soon. You're going to have so many guys that Steven's still figuring out the rotation. What's going to happen is that Danny Ainge needs to make that trade and use the trade exception that he got in the Gordon Hayward deal and go get another player that's going to be an impact player for the Celtics. He talked about getting size and getting shooting. I don't know if that's for just one player or if that's going to be a package deal coming back. He's probably going to use the player trade exception and then also add a couple of players to to kind of free things up on the roster, because Stevens is trying to find minutes for all these different guys, and he just can't find this solid lineup. Because the other night against, I think it was the Clippers, Carson Edwards came out of nowhere and had 16 points. Peyton Pritchard was great at the start of the year. Since he's coming back from his injury, he hasn't been quite as consistent, but still has put up some good numbers, shoots the ball well, good ball handler. Jeff Teague's been kind of all over the place. Tristan Thompson's now finally playing, I think, the way that they want him to play and the way that they know he's capable of. But it's just been a weird start to the year. I'd rather them go through this now and figure this out now than in April. So to say that Stevens should be fired, I wouldn't do that now. Now, if they get to the playoffs and lose in the first round, and it's obvious that they didn't bring the full effort that they were supposed to, then I'd think about it. I'd definitely think about getting rid of Stevens. But I think at this point right now, because of the schedule, because of all the different things that happens at the team, I'm not ready to say that Coach Stevens should be on the chopping block just yet.
One other thing I would add to that is people have been talking about replacing Stevens as far as since last year, or even like the season before, let's say. And if anything, right now with COVID going on, and having an interview process would be absolutely terrible. I think he has a lot of potential as a coach, but he hasn't been able to get him over the hump to where they really are going to be true championship contenders. And I don't know what exactly the team is lacking at this point, but I don't think that scratching the coach is going to help right now.
Yeah, I mean, Brad Stevens is not the issue right now. And I would tell Rick to go back and not only subscribe to our show, but go ahead and watch some of the old episodes when we said that the Celtics team is going to take a little bit of time to come together before they're actually going to play good. And I even went back and said that most NBA teams, you're not going to see the best of them until the second half of the season after this faux all-star game that we're about to have or whatever. So after that, you might start to see some of these teams gel together. And to bring up Pat's point, look at all the injuries that we've had. Guys coming back into the rotation, guys getting out of the rotation. So that means just no mesh. They've had no time to mesh. Obviously Marcus Smart's going to be coming back soon. Tatum and Brown, just starting to mesh with Kemba coming back. So I just think, this team needs a little bit more time. Obviously, it was a short off season. I just would say Rick needs to kind of chill out, give this team a little bit more time. And Brad Stevens is not the issue. Brad Stevens is not the issue. At some point, the players have to play. He has a great scheme. He always draws up great plays out of timeouts. To me, that is the key of a great NBA coach, is out of timeouts, are they always drawing up something to get their players in position to score or to be able to play like a defense good. And he's always doing that routinely. So Brad Stevens is a great coach. I really don't see him as the problem. I really see just the problem right now is that they haven't got the mesh right now. And like I said, arguably one of your best players, Kemba, is just coming back off an injury. He's looking a little bit rusty right now. He needs to come back and get his legs underneath him, get that rust knocked off, get his shot back in there. And once he starts meshing with Tatum and Brown, this team's going to take off. So Rick, come back and email during the playoffs when we're like the 2-3 seed in the playoffs and we're looking hot, man.
Good stuff. Hey guys, I'm gonna put on the Comeback Sports theme here and kind of lead us out for the night. So I'll catch up with you guys later. Let you wrap up the show, but great talk, guys.
Great job, Ben.
Thanks so much, Ben. And folks, continue to send us questions. We're obviously going to try to answer them. Whether it's in the live chat on our YouTube page. Make sure you subscribe to Comeback Sports. When you watch us live on YouTube, make sure you go in the live chat, submit questions on Twitter, submit questions to Comeback Sports, the YouTube channel. We're always looking forward to that. You can email us at Comeback Sports as well, so make sure you do that because we always love answering questions. It's just a nice part of the show that we can do that. You don't just have to listen to me and Brandon talk too much about 10 topics. We can kind of get some other topics in there as well. So that was great to hear from you. So another great show, Brandon. Thanks so much, man, for being here with me. And folks, thank you so much for joining with us. Brandon, your final thoughts before we sign off.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, now with the NFL season over, I think we're going to have some wide range of topics going forward on the show. And we're going to get to talk about some, fan interactive topics like who's the greatest basketball player of all time. And obviously that topic we talked about with Tom Brady about is Tom Brady the greatest sports champion of all time? So we've got some great topics coming for you going forward. So, hey, come back next week and make sure you subscribe.
Yeah. It's always good to have the great NFL content. It gives us so much. But now that the NFL season's over, like you mentioned, it's going to free us up for some other stuff, which I know we're definitely excited to talk about. Folks, we'll see you next time on Comeback Sports. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Make sure you subscribe, you follow us on Twitter, and submit those questions. We'll see you next Wednesday. Have a good night, everybody.